In an age when giants in electronics and pharmaceutical industry profit from an arsenal of patents at their disposal, the physicists whose discoveries contributed the fundamental tool to achieve the results patent derived go largely unacknowledged. Relegated to names and faces on stamps, currency, moon craters and streets, their lives and achievements have faded in memory over generations as emerging discoveries and developments captured attention. The physicists themselves often led difficult and sometimes miserable lives and received very little financial rewards for their discoveries. The contributions of these scientists reach across political, economic, and cultural boundaries. The applications so fundamental to daily existence of mankind, it would be difficult, maybe even impossible to function without them. Think Edison and the electric light bulb. These contributions should be treated as property of mankind, with no national boundaries. Another troubling aspect is that the legacy of these great minds is not being carried forward as it should be by the present generation. Currently, most students opt for engineering subjects rather than pursuing science, BSM is followed by PhD, which would guide them towards research and eventually enlightenment. In the race to win the ultimate prize of instant success, long-term research into development and discovery that benefits humanity as a whole is sacrificed for short-term study that garners immediate financial awards. In a striking contrast to the contemporary mindset, the physicists of old worked relentlessly towards a higher purpose in life, often sacrificing stability, comfort, and monetary benefits. Succeeding over adversity, they are remembered and respected beyond their lifetimes, and their accomplishments will both benefit and be remembered by generations to come. This video is a homage to all the physicists who changed the course of the world, the way that we live and understand, offering us a different perspective. It's a glimpse into the rise and fall of their lives and careers. Misfortune and insecurity plagued the early life of many physicists. Lower life expectancy meant that many lost one or both parents before they reached the age of self-reliance. 3 months after Newton's birth, his father died. His mother left him with his grandfather and subsequently remarried when he was 3. Fraunhofer and Fourier were orphaned at the age of 11 and 9. Kelvin, Ohm, and Maxwell were also amongst those who lost their mothers at a young age. Max Born and Blaise Pascal shared the same fate. Their mothers died when they were 4 years old. Pascal, however, had 2 sisters who cared for him. Boltzmann was 15 when his father died, and Rydberg at tender 4. Till the age of 4, Volta showed no sign of talking. His family feared he was slow-witted and dumb. He too lost his father at 7 years of age. Life was no less cruel to Marie Curie. She lost her mother in childhood and years later her husband in a street accident. Despite the early loss of role models and nurturers, even lacking the guidance and support they would have provided, these kids endured through time and emerged as visionaries who worked for the benefit of the humanity. Choosing a career was as much of a challenge then as it is now. General education was basic and most offspring followed their father's footsteps. Others were apprenticed to tradesmen so that they could learn a trade or craft and make a living. For those without recourses, education was basic at best, and parents looked at financial security for their children. Michael Faraday's father was a blacksmith's apprentice. In his childhood, Michael too worked as an apprentice to a village blacksmith. The family was not well off, and having received only a basic schooling, young Michael had to educate himself. At 14, he became apprentice to a local bookbinder and bookseller. Henry's father was a day laborer. Van der Waals worked as a carpenter, and Fourier was a tailor's son. Stephen's father was a miller at Flour Mill, and his mother was employed as a maidservant. Benjamin Franklin was removed from school at age 10 to work with his father at candle making. Hygiene was educated at home till the age of 16. He became a fugitive upon abandoning his apprenticeship. Galileo was luckier. His father was a wool merchant and he had better education opportunities. He was enrolled as a medical student at the University of Pisa. While there, Galileo developed a fascination for mathematics and ignored his medical courses to such an extent that he left Pisa without a degree. Galileo went back to Florence to try a scrape living as a private tutor in mathematics and natural philosophy, as physics was known in those times. 4 years after he left the University of Pisa without a degree, Galileo returned as a professor of mathematics. Even for those born with silver spoon in their mouth, physics was not an obvious choice of study or career. Many famous physicists started their career in medicine. Felix Savard trained for a career in medicine, however, he spent more time studying physics than in treating patients. Despite Helmholtz's father's desire for his son to study medicine, as it was supported by the government, Helmholtz studied philosophy. Young obtained his doctorate in medicine from University of Göttingen. Gilbert was a doctor by profession as well as being Queen Elizabeth I's physician. Foucault abandoned the study of medicine in favor of physics due to blood phobia. Fizeau came from a family of doctors and was also enrolled in medical college, but he had to withdraw on account of bad health. He later made his career in physics. Physics is such an intriguing subject that more than a few talented minds left their careers in wide range of other fields to study it. Biot started his career in commerce. He went on to serve in the army and was imprisoned for deserting. Later, he became a professor of mathematics and finally a professor of physics at the Collège de France. Avogadro's father was a well-known lawyer, and he himself earned a doctorate of law. Newton's mother wanted him to be a farmer. He was once even withdrawn from school until his master persuaded his mother to send him back. Brewster was intended for clergy and was sent to the University of Edinburgh at the age of 12. De Broglie was a student of history. Physicists were often eclectic and versatile in talent. The most interesting case is that of Pauli. After a breakdown resulting from his divorce, Pauli consulted a psychiatrist and psychologist, Carl Jung. Jung's interpretation of his archetypal dreams so impressed Pauli that he went to become one of his best students. The mill of life has been typical for physicists. Poor health conditions against the backdrop of civil unrest and wars took its toll in the form of casualties, and sorrow came too soon and unexpectedly. We must appreciate that they worked to benefit humanity against severe odds. Several physicists had large families, as was the norm in their days, and here too tragedy left its own mark. Euler had 13 children, of only 5 survived. Bose lost one of his 6 children to meningitis during childhood, while another son died in a boating accident. Kepler had 3 children with his first wife, of whom one died from smallpox. After the demise of his wife, Kepler married again. a 24-year-old woman with whom he had 5 more children. Sadly, only 2 of these children survived. Einstein's second son, Edward, had a breakdown at age 20 and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was committed to asylum after the death of his mother. According to the contents of Einstein's letters to his wife, Marek, they had an illegitimate daughter born in 1902, whom he probably never saw, as she was either adopted or died of scarlet fever in her infancy. Benjamin Franklin's first son died of smallpox at age 4. Later, while Franklin was away on a mission, his wife succumbed to a stroke. Van der Waals' wife expired at the age of 34, and a year later, his daughter too perished. The early death of Gauss's wife, followed by the death of his child, plunged Gauss into a depression from which he never fully recovered. Gauss remarried to his wife's best friend, but tragedy struck again when she too died after a lingering illness. Planck endured much personal suffering after the age of 50. After 22 years of marriage, his first wife died, leaving him with 2 sons and twin daughters. Planck's eldest son Karl was killed in an action in 1916. His daughter Margaret died in 1917 during childbirth, and 2 years later, the other daughter also died in childbirth. During World War II, his younger son was arrested due to attempted assassination plot of Hitler. He consequently died at hand of Gestapo and destroyed much of Planck's will to live. Rational and scientific thinking patterns of physicists translated poorly to a lack of tenderness and care in their personal lives, which did not bode well for Marshall Bliss. Though several were talented as musicians or other recreational activities, not many were able to balance their work and successful married life. Separation from their spouses left some of them disturbed over a long period and affected their careers. Pauly had a severe breakdown after his divorce. He remarried but had no children. Higgs' absorption with his research and the resulting stress led to the breakdown of his marriage, causing years of depression. Kelvin married twice, becoming disturbed and disorganized after the death of his first wife. Early death of life partner led to some secondary marriages. When Clausius' wife died at childbirth, leaving him with 6 children to raise, he married again. A child was born of this second union, but Clausius himself passed away 2 years later. Kirchhoff married the daughter of his mathematics professor. He had 2 daughters and 3 sons with her. After her death, he married again. Helmholtz's wife never kept in good health. They had 2 children together. 18 months after her demise, Helmholtz remarried and went on to have 3 more children. Euler, after the death of his first wife, married her half-sister. Following his divorce, Einstein married again. Sadly, his second wife too died of heart and kidney problems. Lagrange had 2 short-lived marriages. Though not many of the physicists remain unmarried, Volta may be considered as honorary bachelor, as he waited till the age of nearly 50 before being wed. Stephen too finally married a widow at the age of 56, only to expire a short time later from a stroke. Henry Cavendish was almost terminally shy of women and even avoided talking with them. Not surprisingly, he never married. Some of the other notable bachelors in the world of physics were Louis de Broglie, Gibbs, and Newton. Scientists were known to each other even when the world was not well equipped for quick communication. They regularly exchanged letters, though visits were not quite as common. The closely knit work of physicists is well known, but not much is known about how well they actually knew each other personally. After accepting an offer from Raman to come to Bangalore in 1935, Bond considered taking a permanent position there. The Indian Institute of Sciences, however, did not create an additional chair for him. He next went to Cambridge for a short time to study under Larmor and Thomson. Bond had a lifelong friendship with Einstein, who became a frequent visitor to his home. He also got along well with Minkowski. De Broglie's thesis was checked by Einstein, as the original examiner was unfamiliar with the content of his work. Bohr had a famous meeting with Heisenberg, who had become the head of the German nuclear project. Weber was Gauss's assistant. Poisson and Ampere were both Carnot's teachers. Lissajous and Foucault were childhood friends. Galileo was friends with Huygens' elder brother. Huygens also met Newton on his visit to England in 1689, and Newton's biography was written by Brewster. Interestingly, one of the students interviewed by Doppler as professor of experimental physics at the Royal Imperial University of Vienna was Mendel, the father of modern genetics, who studied physics at the university. Physicists were the forerunners in the study of word and its workings. In order to communicate their interpretation of the mysteries they observed to the rest of the world, as well as to understand those of others from different parts of the world, it was necessary to learn several different languages. Einstein recognized the importance of a paper by Indian scientist S.N. Bose. He translated it into German himself and submitted it on Bose's behalf to the prestigious Zeitschrift für Physik. In turn, physicist Meghnad Saha and Bose brought Einstein's theory of relativity to India by translating Einstein's work from German to English. Hamilton acquired knowledge of 13 different languages at a young age. This included Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, Marathi, and Malay. At the age of 14, Young was already learned in Greek and Latin and acquainted with French, Italian, Hebrew, German, Aramaic, Syriac, Sumerian, Persian, Turkish, and Amharic. He was one of the many who tried to decipher the Rosetta Stone. Tesla was a polyglot, speaking 8 European languages including Latin. Volta learned Latin, French, English, and German. Almost all war equipments through the ages were actually innovations of physicists, but never more so than during the Second World War. Though many physicists weren't directly affected by the equipment they created for war, they lost their jobs and privileges when there was a change of regime, since most either worked for or were close to their governments. Others were marked for their political beliefs. Einstein was included in the list of enemies of Germany by German magazine. The magazine even offered a bounty of $5,000 on his head. His cottage was raided by Nazis and his personal sailboat was confiscated. In 1944, during World War II, Planck's house in Berlin was completely destroyed by bombs, and his younger son Erwin was arrested due to his involvement in the attempted assassination of Hitler. Erwin subsequently died at the hands of Gestapo. By the end of the war, Planck, his second wife, and their son had moved to Göttingen. When Victoria became Queen of England in 1837, her uncle became the ruler of Hanover and revoked the liberal constitution. In this regime, Weber was one of the 7 professors at Göttingen to sign a protest. All 7 professors were dismissed, while 3 of them were ordered to leave the Kingdom of Hanover. Weber, though dismissed, was not forced to leave Göttingen and continued to work without holding any position at the university. Avogadro was removed from his professorship at Turin University when he aided Sardinians' planning a revolution. He was later reappointed. Coulomb was expelled from government during French Revolution. Ampère's father was jailed and executed during French Revolution owing to some political disagreements. Shattered by his father's death, Ampère quit his studies for 8 months. The Franco-Dutch War damaged Hygiene's relationship with Royal Society. Fermi left Italy and immigrated to the United States as new Italian racial laws affected his Jewish wife. Napoleon was fascinated by Volta's discoveries and paid him a substantial salary to continue with his experiments after French troops had destroyed Volta's laboratory in Italy. De Broglie offered his services to the army for developing radio communication during World War II. He was attached to wireless telegraphy section and stationed at the Eiffel Tower. Born also served in the military during war, however, he was given an early discharge due to asthma attack. At the end of World War II, Heisenberg and other German physicists were taken prisoner by American troops and sent to England. In 1946, Heisenberg returned to Germany and reorganized the Institute of Physics with his colleagues at Göttingen. The institute was later named as Max Planck's Institute. Röntgen donated his Nobel Prize money to the university. However, he himself went bankrupt during World War I. It may not be suggested that the suffering of physicists were in any sense more acute than that of other war victims. It may be observed that rational brains tend to become more disturbed when exposed to irrational actions and situations that occur during war. This video might make it seem like life was a series of hardships for most physicists. This was not so. Fortune did sometimes smile on them, and some achieved social recognition and financial reward. The ability to calculate time and date or to use a military compass was sought after lucrative skills in the past, and those who had this knowledge were well paid and had a reasonably respectable living. Voltaire's work was so important to Napoleon that he made Volta a count. Carnot also held high position amongst Napoleon ministries. In 1605, Galileo's brother-in-laws sued him for non-payment of installment owed to them on the dowries of his sisters. Coincidentally, Christina, Grand Duchess of Tuscany, at about the same time invited Galileo to tutor her son in mathematics and instruct him in the use of military compass. The visible signs of privileged position resulted in the claims against Galileo being quietly dropped. A successful alliance was made by Lord Rayleigh when he married Evelyn, the niece of the Earl of Balfour, the future Prime Minister. Robert Boyle's mother, Catherine Fenton, was the daughter of Secretary of State of Ireland. His father, Richard Boyle, received a knighthood on the day of his wedding. Of all the scientists, it was Newton who probably had the widest range of life experiences. He acted as a subsizar, the student's servant, a practice at Trinity College, Cambridge, where some students could work in kitchens and college quarters in lieu of paying tuition fees. It would have been a fairly unpleasant experience, as it involved duties such as emptying chamber pots. Against all odds, Newton went on to become the president of the Royal Society of London and was made a member of the British Parliament. He served the government as the warden and master of the Royal Mint. Upon his death, Newton was buried in Westminster's Abbey. Joseph Henry's funeral was attended by the President of the United States and his cabinet, the Chief Justice and the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, members of both the houses of Congress, as well as by many scientists and other illustrious personages. presence of mind and rational persona were no protection when some physicists simply ran out of luck. In 1925, Hesiod fell off a ladder which, when compounded with his already frail health, caused his death. Fourier fell while descending a flight of stairs. Shortly after this, he suffered a series of attacks of aneurysm of heart. In the winter of 1860-61, Calvin slipped on some ice and fractured his leg, causing him to limp for the rest of his life. Some stories had a happier ending though. Fraunhofer, after being orphaned at 11, started working as an apprentice to a harsh glassmaker. When the workshop Fraunhofer was working in collapsed, he was buried under rubble. Maximilian IV Joseph, Prince Elector of Bavaria, led the rescue operation. Fraunhofer's luck changed when he was able to continue his education alongside his practical training with the money given to him by the prince upon his rescue. Scientists have taught us we humans are not special when viewed within the entirety of the universe. Earth is an ordinary planet. Our Sun is an ordinary star, and the Milky Way is an ordinary galaxy. They have found no distinction between living and non-living matter, and life can be perceived as a complicated form of chemistry. All that is required to make human beings out of amoebas is the process of evolution by natural selection and abundance of time. My choice of individuals highlighted in this video is no way intended to be comprehensive, nor are my descriptive discussions of their individual lives in any way intended to be complete. I've chosen stories that represent the lives of physicists in a challenging society. The wonders that physicists have given to the world have had a great influence in improving the quality of life of mankind. If only they were all alive today to witness the immense transition that probably has exceeded even their own imaginings.